Welcome to the 14th episode of the Hail Mary podcast. I'm A Toves, and I'm joined by my husband, the Toves. We're back to give our hot takes on the latest UTSA athletics and throw some Hail Mary shots downfield for our listeners to love or hate. Last week, I closed the podcast by saying we'd crush Lamar, and crush him we did. UTSA finished the night with a program first shutout, scoring 54 unanswered points, the largest margin of victory in program history. UTSA's defense held Lamar to just 122 yards of total offense, the fewest yards allowed by our defense in program history. If there were any doubts about this being a trap game, they were quickly eliminated when Sticks returned Lamar's punt for a touchdown, making Sticks only the second Roadrunner in program history to return a punt for a touchdown. The next two drives for UTSA sputtered a bit, resulting in field goals, but they were followed up by two touchdown runs by McCormick and a fumble returned for a touchdown by Charles Wiley. UTSA took a 34-0 lead into halftime. Traylor emptied the bench in the second half. UTSA's first drive started strong with a 32-yard touchdown pass from Josh Adkins to Zachary Franklin. Adkins added another field goal and a 16-yard touchdown pass to J.T. Clark before handing the quarterback duties over to Eddie Lee in the fourth quarter. The last scoring drive showcased the future of UTSA football, with run plays by sophomore running backs Kedrick Cobbs and Jalen Lott, and the first field goal by sophomore Everett Ornstein. Overall, UTSA ended the night with 426 yards of offense, 321 yards passing, and 105 yards rushing. Adkins was 11 of 13 for 134 yards, Harris was 13 of 15 for 118 yards, and Eddie Lee was 2 of 4 for 69 yards. All in all, a dominant performance by UTSA in their home opener. So, what were your overall thoughts on the game?
So first of all, let's go back and discuss last week. Last week, we talked about there was no drop-off when we had subs in the game, and we saw that again this week. So it really leads into the whole having a consistent performance the entire time, and so we saw that yet again. Which is really impressive, especially if you have 18 to 24-year-old players. Like, you think you see that from P5 teams, but sometimes you really don't, and you see this more often than not with more experienced G5 teams. And this team is a little more experienced. But I gotta say, looking back at those two things, you had also asked me last week, 2017, what are the differences? And you'd come off that big win against Baylor, and then played Southern in the Dome. Again, another FCS level program. First, the home opener for UTSA, and this year it's Lamar. The difference is that against Southern, the bench was emptied around halftime, which is around the same time the trailer did here, but there was a noticeable drop off in play that we could definitely see. Here again, not so. Like the defense stayed disciplined. The offense, again, sputtered a little bit here or there, but I think you start nitpicking a little bit because obviously you want to see them put up touchdowns as opposed to just multiple field goals. But the reality is no punts in the game, so right. It was a dominant performance by the Roadrunners. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, like you mentioned, it's easy to nitpick and say, well, we should have gotten a touchdown in this circumstance, we should have got a touchdown in that circumstance, but we had no punts whatsoever. We got points on every single drive except for the last drive where the clock ran out, and really we played, I think they said over 80 players, so it was really a large majority, almost all of our players. There's probably 110, 115 something players on the team. So, you played about 75% of your personnel at some point, and we really didn't make any significant mistakes, which, I think is just huge and something that Traylor's got to be really proud of.
Yeah, last week at Illinois, we were just amazed by the fact that it was just domination, essentially from kickoff to the end of the fourth quarter. Same thing here. So, we can certainly, like you said, nitpick. Yeah. You can say this or that, but it really is showing what a difference this coaching staff has made with the team. And I do want to say that I guess I didn't really notice it as much at Champaign, but it was much more evident here just how fast this team is.
Right.
Obviously, we could tell they're also stronger, but the speed, I don't think I've ever really seen Sticks run that fast.
Right.
He looked fast. The defense, the way it swarmed at times, just looked fast. The other thing I want to bring out too, though, is, and I didn't talk about it last week with you, yes, this is a veteran team, but last week they had 3 penalties for 45 yards. All right, so 2 of them were on one player alone.
Right.
Back-to-back plays, essentially. This week is 2 penalties for 15 yards. And then you had another one that was actually declined. So again, you got about 3 penalties each week. But this week, with having so many players play, you would have imagined we could have gotten a little bogged down with, some sort of penalties with these players. You didn't. So again, it's just that establishing that level of play that's consistent, and you know what? It puts you in position to win. And I made this comment to you. I'm not really sure that this is necessarily a true statement, but I'll throw it out there anyway. It's, to me, beginning to look a lot like last year's game, some of those close games that they weren't just able to overcome their opponents. Some of it looks like it really was conditioning. Mm-hmm. It wasn't, and it led to bad execution on plays. Because it just doesn't look like they're getting tired out there. In fact, it just looked like these guys look fresh. Mm-hmm. And after a tough physical game with Illinois, I would have imagined, we've got some banged up players. Things might go a little south, and it just didn't. It was, again, domination. It was fast. And maybe the race facility also has something to do with it. Now that they've got some sort of, medical attention, a little more consistent than they did previous seasons, but the team looks good.
Yeah, I think part of that also speaks to their depth, because you've got so many players that can rotate in, so you're not necessarily having to play as high of a rep count for your starters, which probably helps keep them fresh. But going back into the season, there were the question of, hey, which do we get first, the shutout or do we get a kick return for a touchdown? And I had said I thought we would get a kick return first, because typically by the time you empty the bench, there is kind of enough of a drop off that you see the team at least be able to get a field goal. But we didn't see that. We really saw great consistency, particularly in our defense. I think Lamar crossed the 50-yard line like 2, maybe 3 times the entire game. So it was pretty impressive showing by our defense. Obviously a program record, so it was...
Lamar didn't get very far, and that was a concern, I think, heading into the game, which was, it's an option offense, something that you normally don't see. It's very Army-like, and, mm-hmm. It was brought up when we rewatched the game on TV, but, again, it's... The team looked focused, so, I think... that drop-off that we thought we would see in terms of level of play just never materialized. And again, I think coaching and execution continues to play a part there. So let's talk a little bit about the offense. We're going to nitpick a little bit here, but totally. They did some stretch runs, sort of the east-west, I guess you could say, that just didn't work. I think they were trying, maybe they saw something against Lamar's defense from last week and maybe previous games in the spring. It just didn't. It wasn't working, it looked like we just needed to rush Sincere up the middle, and when we did, we got a few touchdowns out of it. So that was really, I think, a good thing. Though I also feel like they could have used maybe those bubble screens a little bit more, and then sort of like those just kind of motion passes to Josh Cephas. Mm-hmm. They put him in motion, and then they just kind of flare the ball out to him in the flats. Sometimes they're called smoke screens, whatever you want to call them. Those quick hitters really enabled, to me, us to get on the edge without having to, put Sincere or Brendan Brady and give him the handoff out there. So a little nitpicking there, but considering I think Frank really was... I think his biggest problem was trying to figure out who am I going to throw to. Mm-hmm. Normally, you see somebody open against another defense, and you're like, all right, well, Josh is open or Zakari's open. In this case, everybody was available, and I think it was just sort of an embarrassment of riches. I will say the babyface receiving assassin was at it again. he still looks dominant. And you were like, well, he seems kind of slow in the way he runs.
It's the way he runs. It just doesn't look like he's moving very fast, but he is. But it's just, I don't know, there's just something about the way he runs that's kind of deceiving.
It's a smoothness that he has, and I think that's what really kind of adds to that innocent face, but God, he's brutal on the. I mean, he's just tearing apart defensive backs on that big pass that it was just a short pass that he caught. He wasn't wrapped up, and then he just disrespected the cornerback. I think it was the cornerback or it was a safety. I can't remember. It was just
a hand in the guy's face.
Yeah, I mean, he stiff-armed him, and it just wasn't even pretty. I mean, it was like, hopefully that kid's family wasn't in the dome, because that was just embarrassing.
I just keep thinking, though, if he really turns on the jets at some point, like, man, he could be really fast, because he just doesn't look like he's trying that hard when he runs. It's like, it looks like he could have another level of speed.
Yes, he does kind of pause and kind of look around, but I think he's trying to see how he's going to make his next move. And, it's good for him. Again, success. The other thing is, just kind of a note here, is you just got to love the zip on Josh Atkins and Eddie Lee's passes. Like, there's a clear difference when they're throwing out routes or throwing balls downfield from Frank, whereas Frank seems to kind of we can go over this over and over, but yeah, I mean, he kind of noodle arms it sometimes, and it's doesn't have that zip, but these two just show the zip on their passes, and it just kind of gives you. I mean, first of all, you're happy because Josh is your backup quarterback, and you're like, well, okay, we should be okay when he comes in, and honestly, we really are. But Eddie Lee, the thing I saw was just he had that zone defense on him, and he threw it over to Cade Stover. The two defenders seemed like they were covering grass. And I mean, obviously one of them was covering the outside, making sure that if Eddie Lee did decide to turn it upfield, that he was there to make the tackle. But there was another guy, and I want to say maybe he was a cornerback, maybe he was a safety. I think it was a cornerback, though. I'm not really sure what he was doing, because he should have dropped off a little bit further and taken that pass away from Eddie Lee. Instead, Eddie Lee still gets that pass off, and Cade just makes a big play from there. So, a little bizarre from Lamar, but what can you say? I mean, the offense, like we said, kind of sputtered at times, didn't get all the touchdowns that maybe we were hoping for, but they scored, so that's all that really mattered.
Yeah, and how great was it hearing all the students like cheering, and chanting Eddie's name when he got out there? Like, it was kind of great, sort of seeing the future again of what Roadrunner football is going to look like in, probably 2 years, maybe a year, depending on, who decides to stay next year.
Yeah, so let's go over to the defense. It was just an impressive stand, as I put it, by the defenders of the Dome. Mm-hmm. They swarmed, and boy, did they swarm at times. And I was just really impressed with, again, that discipline that they had when it came to the option offense. That option offense can throw you off. If you don't stay disciplined and play your assignment, that's where the option gets you. I mean, it's just like with any offense, except with this, it feels easy to go and try to make a play, but you usually overrun it. You usually make a mistake, and you allow the offense to really make a big play out of it. So the fact that we swarmed and yet we're still able to have sort of I called it sort of a disciplined aggressiveness. It was just great to see from the defense. They could have easily mailed it in against this team, especially we'll rehash again when the subs came in, but everybody stayed in their lanes. And from those doubts that we had about Lep and Wright, and I wouldn't say doubts, I would say we just questioned how that dynamic would work. It's clearly working, because I get those as an FCS team, but they look good.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And the last thing I just want to tell you is just tackling. We talked about sort of that disciplined aggressiveness, and the one thing you might do is just start kind of trying to arm tackle. That wasn't it this time. This time it really was the fact that they made tackles. I think maybe they missed one or two, but for the most part, I didn't see any issues out there. So
yeah, I think the one thing that the defense, again, they got the 2 fumble recoveries, but I think the one thing that they'll probably be kicking themselves again about is, there's an opportunity for at least one interception that they didn't get. So, at some point this season they're going to celebrate as soon as they get that actual interception.
Yeah, they got pressure in the backfield. They did plenty with this against Lamar, but...
And a sack. That's the other thing. They didn't get a sack either, so...
They didn't, but, I think what it really comes down to is they're keeping their assignments and they're playing smart, and it's keeping them in games. In this case, they just overwhelmed Lamar, so...
Right.
Anything else you want to talk about?
Nope, I think we covered it.
All right, let's go on to the next one.
I know we already covered a lot, but what did we learn from this game?
I don't think there was really a lot to take away from this game. Again, FCS, you've got, everybody pretty much playing well, so let's have a little fun with this. And this, I would say the main thing, the future does look bright as you brought it up. We talked about the no significant drop-off, but, it looked fun to see some of these young guys get out there and just be able to fly around on the field, outside of practice, against a real opponent. And so, I don't know about you, but for me, seeing, Eddie Lee get some time out there, and really, Cade Stover was on the 2 deep last week, but to see him make an impact, and just to see some other guys take some snaps, maybe they didn't get to make a stat. However, having them have some time really, I think, is good for the team moving forward. We did talk about, or at least mention, the fact that some of our starters needed some rest. Yep. And I think that, getting to see that early sort of look at the future was crucial so that these starters could get some time off and,
Yeah, interestingly, they played 2 different guys in center after, Maka left. In the first half, and the snaps looked really good. I thought we were going to see some more playing time from KD, but that wasn't the case. There were 2 different guys that played center, one with Adkins and one with
Eddie
Lee, and they really did a really great job. Alleman was the one who was in with Eddie Lee. And then I think with Josh, it was
Demetrius Allen, was it?
Yeah, Demetrius Allen. And again, both of those snaps, I think I saw Josh maybe take one that looked a little bit high, but it wasn't, anything that looked, like they didn't have a lot of experience, or, every now and then you just get a high snap.
And it could be that, one of the things that Traylor had talked about, we're down to our 4th, we lost most of our centers. It could be that while KD is always going to slide over, maybe in some of the bigger games, at least in this game, there was predetermined that we were going to actually play some of these backup centers. So, to your point, good to see them get some snaps, and maybe they're back, and we don't have to worry about Maka potentially being hurt for a long time. He was out there as well,
right.
Which was surprising because he missed essentially 3/4 of the last game. So, hopefully he's healed up and he's ready to go, because it's going to be a long stretch of games that are coming up. So, I think the other thing we learned, which maybe we had just looked past last week, maybe we've looked past it before from last season, but after every extra point made and after every field goal, Hunter DePlaces and Leroy Watson look at each other and do a little shuffle. And shimmy, shuffle, it's whatever you want to call it. It's just a lot of fun. It's fun to see. I had actually sent out a tweet during the game, and I said, this team really likes playing with each other. You can tell, and it kind of just pours over into how they play out there. I think if you're really, truly watching the game, I think it brings a smile to your face just to see these guys dancing around, having some fun. Now, we have mentioned before that Leroy was a dancer, so
yeah,
I think that shuffle, or the shimmy, is probably restraining him, because I think if he could, he would out there, maybe cumbia, maybe he would throw out some other moves, but...
Well, we know he likes to sing, we know he likes to dance, so who knows what he would do.
And I think that whatever that is that Hunter probably told him, let's dial it back. We don't want to get a penalty. So
yeah. But if you do want to see, what we're talking about, I did tweet that out today, so you can look at my Twitter account, and you'll be able to see a little clip from ESPN of the Duplessis and Watson shimmy.
Absolutely. I think you had the third one for what did we learn from the game.
Oh, yeah. Well, we clearly learned after watching the game on ESPN Plus that they can't figure out our numbers. They clearly don't know offense versus defense versus special teams. They kept showing the name of the wrong player. So at one point, they had showed a kick by Hunter Duplessis, and instead, like, what came up on the tag and said he was Brendan Brady. And then there was another one where I think it was DQ had made a stop on defense, and they put up his number, and they said he was Kashawn Compton, who's a tight end. It was like, come on, guys. Like, offense versus defense, special teams. I mean, you got to get the basics down there, ESPN Plus.
Well, even the PA announcer at the game was having problems. He was calling out the wrong names, too. So
yeah, I think he called, at one point they called Cephas Sticks, because, he's number 2 now, and it's just very confusing.
It was a mess. So hopefully they clean it up. But if that's the biggest issue we have this game, for the season, then good for us. All right, let's talk about the offensive player of the game. First, we'll start again like we always do with the bootleg honorable mention, Leroy Watson. Leroy obviously played his assignment and, just like he always does, shows up and really powers that running game. Still really, I would say, being a cog there in that rushing game. Now, we had earlier talked about how the fact that the stretch runs just weren't working out. But I'll be honest with you, I don't think that was all tight ends. I think there was just some other issues that were going on. That said, even going out on some of those pass routes, there was that pass that Frank Harris threw down to Travion Bradley in the first half. Leroy actually had gotten open as he dragged across the middle of the field. And I really thought that Frank was going to look downfield at Travion and then throw to Leroy. Because I got to tell you, Leroy was open. He had like about 5 yards away from his defender. So it didn't happen, but he did get a catch later on with Josh Adkins, and then really muscled over one of the defenders. So kudos Leroy, and of course we cannot forget to reiterate that shimmy. You gotta love a dancing tight end.
Absolutely. I mean, he's got great leadership overall, and it really, you can see it throughout the game, and how he interacts with the guys. We talked about it last year with the bowl game. He's just really having a great time. He's having a lot of fun, and it's really evident why he got a single digit and a 1 this year just based on his leadership.
And I think if we could all just take some of that enthusiasm that he has and we could bottle it up, I think we would love our jobs even more.
Yeah.
If you love your job, great. If you are, just not liking your job, just take what Leroy brings to the field, and I think you're going to be a much happier person because he just loves what he does. That said, our player of the game, for me, was difficult because we really didn't have, I would say, anybody that really stood out. Obviously...
Statistically, yeah.
Sincere was in there, but he didn't play a huge part this game. So, when they were out there, everybody pretty much performed, but I got to give it to Cade Stover. Simply because that first pass that he caught, pretty much like a little bubble screen, but you could see the work in the weight room, which probably led him to be the Larry Coker Memorial Scholarship winner.
Right.
You showed the strength when he caught the pass to break that tackle, and then essentially made a really nice move downfield, and I believe it was a third down. At the very least, got us first down and kept the chains moving. So, big play from him there, and of course, we can't forget the Eddie Lee pass that we talked about earlier. I got to say, Cade made the catch, and most importantly, he made the yards after the catch. Right. So kudos to Cade. Hopefully we get to see more impact from him as the season goes on because even though he's maybe one of the walk-ons, it's good to see them that they're still making impacts. And again, we've got a deep receiving core, so to see him playing and making big plays like that is going to get him more snaps. And
yeah, you got to take advantage of those snaps when you get them, and to see what he did when he did have the opportunity was really great.
Yeah, and we got to think that Traylor just had a wry smile saying he probably does it during practice. We don't get to see it, but good to see it on the actual field of play. All right, so now let's go to the other side of the ball, the defensive player of the game. Again, we'll start out with the bootleg honorable mention. I've got 2 players here. First, I've got Charles Wiley. Tough not to include him when you see the big man scoop up a fumble and rumble down the field. And honestly, I wasn't sure that the end zone was going to stop him. He looked kind of like Forrest Gump when Forrest Gump catches that kickoff return or makes that kickoff return and keeps going down the tunnel. Nothing was stopping Charles Wiley. And I think what was crucial, and probably from his point of view when he talks about being a veteran and showing the young guys how to do it, is that he secured the ball and then he went full speed down the field and did not try to look back, didn't do anything. He was focused on one thing, and that was getting the ball in the end zone. Mm-hmm. So I know he had other stats, but I think that one play really epitomized some of the leadership and, really example that he's trying to impart as a veteran. The other one is really more of a fun one, but it was still a really good play. But Lamont McDougal, I got to give you some props because you did shed your blocker and then you recovered the fumble, but it wasn't so much just that great play there. No, it was him celebrating afterwards, and then he sort of fumbles the ball, and then it hits him. I need to return the ball to the ref. So it's the funniest pickup of the ball, and then it's the way he returned it. It was kind of like, back to you, sir, and just handed the ball back to the ref. I tweeted it out. I think it's hilarious. It was originally tweeted. It was actually a retweet of UTSA football, I believe. Just a funny moment. But again, just some of those fun moments you see from college teams. And it's really, I don't know, it's just a fun time to really capture and really epitomize what was going on yesterday with UTSA football. All right, so for our player of the game, I don't think that he really put together a big statistical performance, but I would say for the first half, I just kept seeing his number over and over on the field, and that was number 7, De'Adrian Taylor. He did have a big tackle for loss early in the game, but I really felt in the first half, when I think he had most of his snaps, he lived in the backfield. He still played discipline, but also when he was in coverage, he stayed disciplined. So I just, again, for me, and maybe it's because I started zeroing in on him because I kept seeing his number everywhere on the field, I just wanted to nominate him and really give him that award for the week for the Hail Mary pod, because I know that that's what's important to him, is that he gets this shout out for his defensive performance.
Not to mention, he did have a pretty good kick return. I think for a moment we were all hoping he was going to take it all the way, but he still got about, 50 yards or so.
Yeah, I mean, again, great performance from De'Adrian, so looking forward to see what the rest of his season looks like.
So at the beginning of the season, we chose our breakout players. So let's talk about how they performed this week, since almost all of our players actually saw the field this game. So on offense, I had Oscar Cardenas, and you had Kedrick Cobbs.
Yeah, so Oscar, I think, again, pedestrian stat in terms of one catch for 19 yards. But again, much like Leroy, big on the blocking end. I think when we look at his whole season, it's going to be filled with more of him being a big blocking asset. Kedrick, on the other hand, did get a few carries, 3 for 19 yards. It was good to see him actually get in action. And I think, I think he's got some opportunities, but the way he was played this game really made me think that while I went and took a big swing with him, he might be buried behind B.J. Daniels in terms of being like a 4th-string running back. Maybe even 5th with Jalen Lott out there, because both of them seem to be splitting some time when they were, as we got into the garbage time, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that Traylor's probably trying to get B.J. A little bit of action when he can, given the fact that he is a super senior.
Yeah, so I think with this one, I really want to push for sort of splitting the point here and at least getting me my first, or getting me on the board.
Selfish, but okay.
But that's just me. Now, if we go to the defensive side, you had Kelechi Nwachukwu, and I had Caden Holt. Mm-hmm. I've been waiting for Caden Holt to be on the field. And honestly, I didn't really see the Kansas linebackers out there. But then again, you had so many guys out there playing that they probably did make an appearance, and we just didn't really notice.
Yeah, I definitely saw Prox I don't know if I saw Feaster or not, but I definitely saw Prox when we went back and watched the game again.
But I did notice that Holt at least was in the entire fourth quarter, and if not actually previous to that. And again, we've talked about the drop-offs stuff before. I didn't feel like he got taken advantage of. He played his assignment, and once again, dominant performance from the defense. Kelechi, I had seen him earlier in the game, but again, with Lamar being more of a running team, Kelechi's job was really to have run support. And if they did go into some sort of pass, then, obviously he's got a different assignment there. But for the most part, because he's run support, it was going to be very difficult for him to make any sort of big impact unless Lamar broke through the first and second level of our defense. And that rarely happened. I think it happened a couple times, and I put that in quotation marks, more because of the fact that I think we had gotten off the line of scrimmage some more. So it wasn't like we had missed tackles and the runner got out there. So I think this goes back to, again, sort of a half point. I think, neither one of them actually put together a complete game, or to be able to say, oh, Kelechi was just all over the place, or Caden was all over the place. Which leads us back to our special teams, which really clearly is showing that we didn't really know what we were talking about, or maybe we did. We
went into this guessing because there wasn't really a lot of, they kind of played a couple of different combinations, and so I was shooting in the dark. I think we both admitted we were shooting in the dark when it came to our special teams.
I still think Julon can make a bigger impact than BJ, but clearly, because neither one of them fielded any sort of kick, we're both going to get the goose egg here for week 2. But we still have plenty of time to make up some ground here. So
can I get points from BJ for playing on offense? Is that not how that works? No. All right. Well,
we said that's not how it's going to work. So this week we split a point. We essentially get 1 point each. For the season, you're up 3-1. So let's see how the rest of the weeks treat me, because I still think Kedrick's going to rip off some big run and will get me even further on the scoreboard.
All right, we'll see. Before we go, I wanted to talk a little bit about the game day atmosphere that we had this week. First time during post-COVID where we've had, tailgating, we've had, fans not having to be socially distanced in the stands. It felt good to kind of have a return to some normalcy. I know there's been a lot of, talk on Twitter about, how many people came to the game and if it was enough. And, some people were excited, some people were disappointed. We had, just over 16,000 tickets sold. But my personal opinion, I think we should be really excited about the fact, first and foremost, that the students showed up. We do have to remember we are still in a pandemic. The Alamo Dome says they have COVID protocols in place, but they're really virtually unheard of. There were lots of people not wearing masks. There was no social distancing. And I think there's still, we are a team where people bring their kids to the games. And I think there's still a lot of families that are very concerned about bringing their unvaccinated children into the Alamo Dome, into an indoor stadium. So I think we can't get too caught up in the numbers, in terms of the attendance. But we should be excited and we should be focused on, the student section. We had a lot of students, and it seemed like some of the changes they made in terms of trying to get, the students to come inside the dome and not just stay out and tailgate seemed to help. And hopefully we continue to see that. There was a little bit of talk on Twitter about, the bus situation afterwards. So hopefully that doesn't deter the students from coming. I think if we see a good student turnout next week, we'll know that we're, on the path to success, regardless of what happens with the rest of the community. Because, that age group, that demographic tends to be less concerned about COVID as some of, your other demographics. And I think, it's just the reality that we're in with the pandemic. If this was 2019 or 2018 and we didn't see a great turnout with the success we're having on the field, I'd be really discouraged. But I don't think we can let that, really get to us given the reality that we do have.
That's a good point. I think when it comes to the students, I know there's been several people who have said, let's stop focusing on the students. What about the rest of San Antonio? Well, I think you first focus on the students because they're the ones that are there. They're the ones that are going to class with most of these players. So, whether it's football players, whether it's basketball players, whatever it is.
And they're the future.
They're friends of those guys. So, and ladies that are playing the sports. So, you want them going out to these athletic events and to essentially get energized, because when they do, they become alumni and they go into supporting the team / university once they leave. So I agree with you. I think, seeing the students there, I kind of hypothesized to you that maybe it was because, they've been virtual for the first couple weeks at UTSA, that now that they're essentially about to go back in person, I think this week, that maybe this was kind of like the party before school actually starts, so to speak, right? Like, they actually got to go out there. And, it's also really fun to see the players post-game kind of head over to the student section. They, kind of pointed at them, and it was good to see the students just really cheer.
Kind of that camaraderie between the students.
It was like...
And a lot of them stayed through the end of the game. I mean, when you have a blowout like this, a lot of times you see the students, you see the fans leave, and there were still a lot of people in the dome in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, impressive. But I also think that everything that Traylor's done and the team has really shown as well, I think there's getting that buzz. And, I know that everybody in San Antonio has all sorts of options to take on a Saturday. But, potentially, to me, spending an afternoon with the Roadrunners or an early night with the Roadrunners, they're a fun team to watch. And I think that they're putting a product on the field, not only that's fun to watch, but I think that's going to lead to a little bit more. And so you don't want to be the last ones on the bus. And I don't mean to make that comparison again with I know those problems post with UTSA, but I do think that that whatever happened in that situation was unfortunate. Hopefully they get it fixed. But this is our I guess attempt to fix that as well, in terms of not the bus situation, but fans to go out there and go check out the Roadrunners, just have some fun. Yeah, support the team. That said, just want to quickly go through this. If you did attend the game, you probably saw the donors of the game. We were actually recognized as donors of the game. It was cool. It was a great experience.
A little bit flattering, a little bit embarrassing.
Yes, absolutely. You essentially have two introverted people here that are having fun talking on a microphone, and sans video, because I know our nephew had asked, "Oh, do you put this on YouTube?" And we said, "No way." So to have that sort of flattering, though embarrassing honor, I'll just say this: if you have the opportunity to donate to UTSA, whether it be to the athletic department, whether it be to just the university in general, to us, donations have always been about helping the students. It's never been about having some sort of condition as to why we want to donate. We do it because we love the university and we want to continue to see it succeed via the students. And the way you can impact a student is through donations. So whether it's our money is used for the football team, the basketball teams, softball, soccer, whatever it is, these young men and women are representing UTSA, and I got to tell you, I've never heard of any major issues with our program. So it's a great program, and I'm really happy to continue to donate.
Yeah, and me personally, I went to UTSA on scholarship, so I think it's a great way to give back. So if you have the opportunity to do it, I just encourage you to do that.
Absolutely. So real quick, let's talk about the rest of Conference USA. They fared okay, I would say. I mean, all the wins came against FBS teams. FCS, sorry. All came against FCS teams. So you knew that was probably going to be a win, though the La Tech game is probably the closest one, where an old UTSA name, Frank Selfo, really put some pressure on the La Tech team. Now, if we talk about FBS teams, we somewhat watched the Western Kentucky game, and we're just kind of keeping an eye on it because, of course, Bailey Zappi, who's a Texan and who went to Houston Baptist, is a member of that team. And so our friend over at Alamo Domotable, Jared, has, I wouldn't say a man crush, but maybe he does have a man crush on Bailey Zappi.
Definitely talked up Bailey Zappi over the years.
And so, yeah. And just real quick on that, I mean, if you want like football junkie type of stuff from a podcast and sort of content, check out Alamo Domotable. Jared and them and Adrian do a great job. But Jared really has had some sort of man crush on Bailey Zappi. So caught my eye, and I love it. So, watching them play against Army was fun because he really did sling it around. It was fun to watch. But again, it goes back to the problems against Army. Army's so disciplined. I think they had like a 3rd and 18. And the announcers were like, they're just in a bad position. There's no way they actually convert this. And then they converted. Because, again, disciplined play. And that, to me, kind of shows me where UTSA is at. They've gotten to more disciplined play. And you see how that benefits you. It keeps you in games, and it gives you opportunity to win more games than you lose.
Yeah, but I think definitely, that Western Kentucky team is one to watch out for. I think that's a game that at the beginning of the season, I thought we have a chance of losing. It's going to be, a challenging game for us. And then watching that strong showing Western Kentucky had against the Army just, tells me again that they're a team we need to watch out for. Disappointed in La Tech's performance against Southeast Louisiana. My thoughts that we were going to lose that game might be wrong. We'll have to see how they play the rest of the season, especially seeing them come off of, a strong showing against, at least in the first quarter, against Mississippi State, then to go in and, just be gifted this win really in the fourth quarter against Southeast Louisiana because they had a fumble. It was kind of interesting. And then, for all of us who love to hate on Texas State, they barely beat FIU in overtime. But I was looking at, Texas State, and if they win every game they're favored to win, this could be the year they make their first bowl appearance. So I'm going to keep an eye on Texas State.
They're Texas State, though, so
that is true.
Most likely that's not going to happen. But
if they win, not win, if they win every game.
Yeah, so I mean, it's good to see though, just from a competitive standpoint, because the better that they are, we're 4-0 against them. So
I know it makes our wins more, more valuable if they were good and we continue to beat them.
Right. So real quick, we're going to take a quick peek at Middle Tennessee. Next game coming up in the Dome. Now, look, we didn't really dive too deep into this. We know there's been some general impressions about that Middle Tennessee defense. I still think that despite their improvement, much like many other teams that we faced previously, this UTSA team, with the depth and with their level of play, I'm not saying that it's going to be a romp, but I am thinking that it's not going to be as close of a game, simply because I think Middle Tennessee's depth is going to be challenged by UTSA. And I still think that, no matter how you want to look at Middle Tennessee, whether you think that there might be an upset special brewing or something going on, I will just point you to the fact that we could have had a lull in performance against Lamar, and we didn't. We saw a team that was focused and executed like they were still playing Illinois. And I right now, not doubting the Roadrunners in terms of the early season success. Any thoughts?
Absolutely. I mean, right now, I think the line opened at 13, or the spread is at 13. ESPN gives us a 77% chance of winning. I mean, again, I think, Traylor fed the team some cheese after the game. So, he did let them eat the cheese a little bit, but I do think that based on the performance that we've had in the first two games, this team is going to show up and they're going to take care of Middle Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, I think that line actually opened up a little bit lower, but I think everybody's betting UTSA, so that's inflated this line. Regardless, there's a reason why it's getting inflated. It's because people have seen UTSA play, and I don't see the lack of excitement from UTSA. I still think they're going to look across and see Middle Tennessee uniforms, but they're going to play them as if they're playing Illinois or they're playing some other P5 school. Yeah. So I think we're in for some fun next Saturday.
All right, well, thanks for joining us on the Hail Mary podcast. I'm A-Toves.
And I'm the Toves.
We'll see you back next week after the Middle Tennessee game.
Birds up, everybody.